Hi folks, it's Andy. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Welcome to this week's Kendo rant. Please excuse the informal setup. It's not brilliant lighting or sound engineering and all that sort of stuff. I'm still traveling in Japan at the moment, so I'm sort of recording this on the fly, as it were. We're going to jump to the questions in just a minute. Before we do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube magical stuff. And most importantly, support the channel by shopping at KendoStar.com. KendoStar, of course, is the best kendo equipment website in the history and future of the human race. Now, of course, I would say that because I own the place, but it's true and everyone agrees. So shop at KendoStar.com. Speaking of KendoStar, check out the latest addition to the imported series, the fantastic Nanahoshi, designed by Tetsu, premium made in Japan Borga set. It is just exquisite. All right, just check it out. Check it out. Go and look on the website, KendoStar.com. Look at the Nanahoshi Borga set. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. It's pricey, but it's worth it. Okay, let's jump to these questions. Thank you, Andy Sensei, for another wonderful Kendo rant. By the way, I'm sorry I can't get the questions on the screen because I'm not in my usual setup. So sorry about that. I'll do my best to read them out kind of slowly if I don't get too excited along the way. Thank you, Andy Sensei, for another wonderful Kendo rant. Thank you very much for watching. To follow up on your comments on a sensei doing tsuki when you attack at the wrong time or if you don't break their kamae, what are the non-verbal cues a sensei may do in kihon practice, jigeko, etc.? I know I need to move my feet faster when I pass through and they push their shinai across my back, but what if they strike men after one passes through? I recently watched a YouTube clip with a 9th dan sensei doing kirikaeshi with two 8th dan senseis and noticed the 9th dan sensei would sometimes strike their men after completing a strike. There are other non-verbal cues that are there other non-verbal cues that you have used or have seen used whilst teaching? And if I may ask a question, when doing mitorigeko, is it better to focus study on someone with a similar height, or does it not matter as long as they are demonstrating good kendo? If it matters, I'm preparing to test for 3rd dan. For former, would you recommend players who are less than 168 centimeters tall? Thank you, and shop at KendoStar. Thank you very much. Okay, so last week we talked a little bit about when you attack a sensei and they hold the kamae. It's not quite the same as them doing tsuki, but they hold the kamae and you kind of get stuck on the end of their shinai. And we talked about how that's them sort of demonstrating that now it's not the time that you're supposed to attack. And yeah, your question is what other sort of visual cues or sort of cues can you maybe expect from a sensei in that kind of situation? And it's hard to say because it really depends on the individual sensei. You mentioned about the YouTube video about the 9th dan sensei. I know the one you're talking about. And I don't think that necessarily, it depends. Like if you're, if you're doing, if it's during kirikaeshi is one thing, but during like jigeko, what it would be hikitate geiko, where the sensei is kind of pulling up your ability. If it's during that point and you sort of hit and you run past, and then when you turn around, they hit you, I think they're kind of trying to demonstrate to you or communicate to you that maybe you're losing focus or connection with them by running off and turning your back. But during kirikaeshi, lots of sensei do that sort of, as you sort of hit and go past, they might hit you. Maybe they want you to turn instead of trying to run past, turn and do a hikiwaza. Or maybe they're just doing it as kind of, I hesitate to use the word, but kind of encouragement, or to kind of keep you going. I've sort of experienced both of those. I think as well, another sort of visual cue, I don't know if it's a visual cue, but I mean, when you're doing that kind of keiko, and it's kind of rare that you get the chance to do it actually, but where you're sort of against a much higher level sensei, and that sensei is performing, like I said, hikitate geiko, where they're trying to encourage your ability. And then what often those senseis will do, especially the sort of 8th dan Japanese senseis, is they will try to make you strike. and often at that time they will do debana or kaishi or something like that. Well, that's not the point really. The point is that when the sensei wants you to strike, you have to, read that cue, and hit with your full effort. Receiving the strikes is learning in this case, which is a bit of an alien concept, I think, to a lot of our kind of, especially our sort of Western brains. So I think one of the things you have to kind of try to tune into is try to figure out what is the sensei trying to encourage you to attack at, and then try to make an attack in that position. And yeah, if you receive the debana or kaishi, whatever, that's one thing. Not all senseis do that, and it depends as well, on the relationship you have with the sensei and all sorts of stuff as well. So there's a few variables in there. In terms of like when you're doing Mitori Geiko, I tend to have a sort of mixture of it. I think what you have to be when you're doing Mitori Geiko, which is Mitori Geiko is watching practice. So whether you're like watching Kendo on YouTube or it can be in real life, it's an extremely vital element of Kendo improvement. Okay, you can't just go to Kendo practice and expect to get better without any sort of input from sort of visual input from the outside, in my opinion. In Japan, lots of people get this automatically because they're in dojos surrounded by, very, very experienced kendoka. Often they have seniors or senpai that they can watch, And it's normal, for example, even in a kids club, at lots of places where if they go to a shiai, the younger or less experienced kids, if they lose the shiai earlier on, but their senpai remain in the tournament, or even if they don't, it'd be normal for them to stay and watch the tournament until the end, so that they can do the Mitori Geiko. So I think one of the not skills, but it is a skill that I suppose that you have to develop when you're doing Mitori Geiko, is also it's not just sitting and watching. All right. Oh, whoa, what a good man that was. Oh, and on YouTube, you watch your kind of ippon reels and stuff like that. Of course, it's fun to do that. Oh, wow, look at that kote, what a great kote. I wish I could hit kote like that. Yeah, that's that's all well and good, but there's more to it than that. You have to first, I think, you have to be able to identify which elements of what you're watching are what you want to apply to your Kendo, and in what order you want to apply them. Do you want to apply them kind of in the near future or in the long term? Is this applicable to your Kendo? Is this the kind of Kendo that you want to do? And is it the kind of Kendo that's necessarily appropriate for you to want to do? So, you say you're, less than 168 in height. Is it appropriate for you to watch players who are sort of 180, 185 and try to copy their Kendo? It may be, it may not be. I'd say that really depends on the context, there's certain, obviously there's going to be stylistic differences that come with different body shapes and heights and stuff like that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you can't take anything from taller players either. So I think there's a balance to be had. And I think it's a case of experimenting with it a bit. But the key is you have to identify, take it, absorb it into your brain, into your memory bank, and then you have to try to apply it in your keiko. And the best way to get a result out of that is to film your own keiko and watch it back as well. I think that's all super, super important. And the way I tend to do it is I obviously have, certain kendoka who I look up to or really respect, or do Kendo that I aspire to. Some of them have similar physical attributes to myself, some of them don't. So, what I try to do is I try to approach that in an appropriate manner as well. So like, okay, well, maybe my body won't move in that exact way, but maybe there's a way I can adapt it, or maybe the way that person hits, let's say, degote, is less applicable to myself than the way this person does. For example. but I think it comes through experimentation as well. But I'd say the first step, especially, I'd say the first step is actually trying to do it. All right, actually trying to do it. So that's what I'd say there. Okay, next question. Hello, Sensei. What are the top 5 sprays for Borga to use during practice? I'm looking for something that has some smell but not too strong, like cologne or fragrance. Thanks. I can't think of 5 sprays to use for the Borga, to be honest. We've got the Kendo deodorant spray on our website. That's pretty good. I use that a lot, and it works really, really well. The way you use that is when it's new. First time you use it, you spray quite a lot onto the Borga, let it dry, and then after each use, you just spray a bit on. And I think that works pretty well, actually. That works pretty well. Another option is you can dilute some isopropyl alcohol, like 1 part isopropyl to 9 parts water. That can work pretty well as well. Some over-the-counter stuff as well, like Febreze, that sort of thing, can be all right. But that can be quite, if you don't want the strong smell, probably better to avoid that sort of thing because it can leave quite a flowery smell behind, or depending on which fragrance you select. The main thing I'd say to look out for, though, is when you are spraying the Borga with these sort of things, is just be careful not to spray too much on the men butcher and the men gannet. Okay, that's the cage and the black and red painted part around the edge of the cage. Try not to spray too much on there. It's not very good if it gets wet. Usually these are alloy, so they're the preventative to rust, but it's not good to get it wet. And more importantly, the membrane, that's made of rawhide, and if it gets too wet, it can soften, and that's not very good at all. It can really break. So just be careful on that. Okay. If you don't want to smell, then I don't think the Kendo deodorant spray is that strong a smell. It's not as strong as using Febreze. I have this Febreze here, which is in Japan. It's a premium Febreze, but that's got a reasonably strong smell, but I don't mind it too much. The Kendo one's not as strong as that. Or if you want sort of zero odor, I'd mix a bit of the isopropyl. It's pretty easy to make that as well. Get yourself a spray bottle off Amazon or something. And there you go. Next one, a riddle to solve. To use physical might and be a brute, or to not use physical might and be pushed around by those my weight or heavier, what do? Some brutishness has served me well in Taiko so far. Read some strong opinions on this subject. I don't think it's ever good to rely on your physical strength to be a brute, to be honest. That doesn't mean you have to be a pushover. I think what you have to do is you have to be sensible in the way you use the weight and the strength that you have. I'm not a particularly big person. Certainly in Europe, I'm bigger than used to be, but I'm not a particularly massive person. There's a lot bigger people than I am, a lot taller, a lot heavier, a lot more muscular people than I am. But I'm able to control people who play a little bit too rough because I've probably got enough physical strength to deal with some extent of it, but more importantly, I'll try to use ashtabaki to avoid it and avoid getting into that situation where they could potentially use that as an advantage. But not everyone can do that. I also spend a lot of time practicing with people who are less, who should we say, at a physically less, what's the right word? At a less physical advantage than I have. Is that what you know what I mean, right? They don't have as much physical strength or weight as I do. For example, here in Japan, I'm practicing at my daughter's high school. It's an all-girls school. They're all high school girls. They're all much smaller than me, and they're much lighter than I am. But they're very, very strong. They've got very, they've got very technically advanced Kendo. But when I practice with them, of course, I am sensible about how I use my own physical strength, you know, because Kendo is not a competition of physical strength. All right. Now, of course, it is the case that you can use it to your advantage at times, but again, you have to just be smart about it. Smart's not the right word. You have to be sensible about it. You have to be the key word you have to be responsible with it. All right. So, you know, look, if you've got someone else who's the same size as you and they want to start pushing, start getting pushy about it, that's one thing. But then if you're towering over someone and I've said this before on the show, if you find that your opponents often fall over, it might not be the case that they're prone to falling over. It might be that you're the problem and you're the one that's being too physical. So if you often find that you're knocking people over, there's an issue there, all right? So that's something to keep in mind, okay? I just say, as I say, just be sensible and most importantly, be responsible. All right, nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to have an unpleasant experience. It doesn't mean that everyone has to be, especially in the tournament. Yeah, of course, someone's going to have an unpleasant experience when they lose. But you know what I'm saying, right? You don't want to hurt someone. You don't want to make somebody feel like they were bullied or pushed around or something like that. It's not. It's not right, okay? And of course, there's occasionally the situations where someone who's a lot smaller will bound into you, not realizing that they're basically running into a brick wall or the equivalent of, and they might bounce off you. That's one thing. But what I am saying is you just try to be in control of things so that you don't, so it doesn't become an issue. Next one, from Sibizeri, when performing hikimen with a push to the left, is it okay to press or push with the shinai against the opponent's neck? All right, so push to the left. Your left, I assume, push to this way. So what you mean is this way, and then hit in hikimen. And it's interesting because that comes off the back of the previous question. This is legitimate. It's called kuzushi waza, okay, kuzushi. And yeah, it's where as you can momentarily press on the opponent's neck to make a strike. It says clearly in the handbook that accompany the rules for shiai and shimpan that the handsoku that applies to pushing on the neck with the shinai doesn't refer to momentarily using it to push somebody off balance slightly. At the same time, the same applies to what the answer was to the previous question, is it has to be done sensibly and responsibly, all right? So, am I going to use that waza against somebody who's a lot smaller than me? I might do, but I'm going to moderate the amount of force that I apply when I do it. So at the end of the day, the goal is to make a strike, not to push them over or to break the collarbone or something like that, yeah? So if I was with someone a lot smaller than me, a lot lighter than me, and I put all my force into that, I'm going to send them over there and I'm not going to be able to make a strike, all right? So that's not correct either, is it? You know what I mean? So yes, it's okay, but it has to be done safely, responsibly, okay? Okay, I'm firing through these today. Hello, Fish Sensei. Recently, a massage therapist told me that the left side is much more developed. My senpai advised me to do exercises with Jordan as well to maintain the balance. Maybe you also have thoughts on this. Also, please advise me which kote to choose as a second pair. I currently have the Vanguard Myrmidon. Thank you for everything you do for the community. So I have heard this a lot. I'm not sure about the idea of going to doing stuff from Jordan to kind of balance that out. I don't know if I really agree with that. I'm not against the idea of swapping hands and swapping feet for doing some suburi. That's fun if you want to challenge. But I don't think it's necessarily a great idea to I mean, you could do, but I don't think it's going to do enough unless you literally do 50% of your kendo in Jordan. And I don't think that's probably beneficial. What you'd be probably better doing is there's probably a couple of things at play here, but what you'd probably be better doing is other exercises outside the dojo, including suburi, though, that strengthen both sides equally. That said, I don't think, although Kendo, we often talk a lot in Kendo about the left side, especially the left foot, left hand. These things are critically important, but I don't think it's I don't think they should be focused on to the detriment of the right hand side of the body. Kendo has to be balanced, and every great Kendoka I've ever met, their body has been quite well balanced on both sides. And some of them just through doing Kendo. And that's because, for example, yes, swinging the Shinai, we swing from the left hand in principle, that's true. But when you execute Tenuichi, it comes from both hands. There's an element of the right hand in your strikes as well. Just like when you do Fumikomi, your push is from the left, but then your stamp and your pull up is from the right. So in theory, you should be somewhat balancing them a bit. So my concern there is if you're finding that you're more developed on one side, probably there's a lack of balance in your normal Kendo itself in that regard. But I don't like the idea of fixing it by going to Jordan. I think the better idea is to probably just say, just to focus on physical training separately. And because the problem is if you start to become too unbalanced in that way, then I think you're going to start to become prone to injury. So I mean, I'm no expert on that field before anyone starts asking me questions about it. But I think it's probably important for that in that regard. Okay. About a pair of kote to choose as a second pair. You currently have the Vanguard Myrmidon. There's two ways you can go with this. You can get another pair, like just as a practice pair, and then keep the Myrmidon as the sort of main pair, or get like another pair of Myrmidon and just swap them out. That's an easy way to solve it. You can get a cheaper pair like the original Vanguard. They're a great buy, to be honest. A really great value set of kote for a set of practice kote. Or you could go the opposite way. And I think, thinking back onto my Kendo journey, this is the way I went. And I don't think it's a bad idea where you could invest in a better pair of kote. I think a lot of people would advise, and I agree with the advice of the first thing to upgrade. You start Kendo, you get yourself a Borg set, you start practicing, great, cool. And then maybe you get even first Dan or second Dan, something like that. And then you start to look at upgrading your Borgo. Now, of course, you can just upgrade the whole set, but if you were to upgrade just the parts, first thing you want to upgrade is definitely the kote, in my opinion. So the other thing you could do is look at getting a nicer pair of kote. Look at something like, definitely look at the Nanahoshi designed by Tetsu Kote, because they are amazing. If you don't mind waiting for the production, if you want a solid pair of kote, and they're not, frankly, and they're not cheap, but for what you get, the kote represent really good value from Nanahoshi. I've got to say they represent really good value. You could get them, and then sort of hesitate to use the word relegate the Myrmidon kote to your sort of backup or practice pair, and use your sort of nicer ones. And of course, it doesn't need to be the Nanahoshi ones. You could look at something like I'd also definitely look at the Kiraboshi if you want something made in Japan, but also something like the Sentinel kote, a really good choice too. I use the Sentinel kote a lot myself, because they've got that slightly nicer sort of premium feel, because they've got the full deer skin on the atama, on the fist section, but they've got a really nice wide stitching on the futon still, so they're really protective. So the Sentinel kote are a great choice as well. So yeah, they're the two sort of routes you could go with there. If you want to save some money a bit, then get yourself like a pair of the original Vanguard. Use them as like a backup practice pair, and your Myrmidon as your main ones. Get another Myrmidon set as another option, or get a nicer set and then use your Myrmidon ones as a sort of secondary set. Hello, Fish Sensei. Back to the acceptable cuts in Shinsa Saga. I love this. I was grateful to recently pass my Ikkyu Shinsa. Congratulations. And I'm aiming to attempt Shodan in December this year. Prior to the Ikkyu grading, it was reinforced to me to concentrate on and prioritize men waza in the Ikkyu Jitsugi. I did this and it must have worked. However, my younger, much faster opponents, I noticed, were also using a far wider variety of waza. They're also successful in their respective level gradings, as far as I know. I understand gradings focus more on technique and fundamental aspects of Kendo at this level. However, I felt I was holding back using a fuller variety of waza due to concentrating on men waza. In fact, in a warm-up jitsugi, just before the grading, I was told to definitely not use hiki waza after I'd used a few in the jitsugi. Any more light you could shed on this matter would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so here I'm going to give you a massive caveat first before I answer this, right? Any advice I give you, let me just clear this, just put this out there, right? And I probably should make more a point of this on the show. Any advice I give you about gradings is like my opinion. All right? I mean, everything I say and answering these questions is my opinion. It doesn't mean it's gospel. It doesn't mean it's definitely the only way. And the problem you've got with gradings is this is how I view things as a grading panelist. All right? This is how I view things. Doesn't mean that every other person or every other panelist views it in that way as well. Lots of them don't. Lots of them don't. Lots of them think in different ways. I generally follow the International Kendo Federation's guide. I've done a video about it. Guidelines for gradings, but not everyone does. So my answers on this sort of thing usually align with that. Now, with that being said, my opinion is that you do get told to focus on men waza in the IQ gradings. And I've said the same to my students. Because to be honest, if you do a men's strike with Fumikomi and IQ grading, you'll generally pass. You know what I mean? Yeah, man. It doesn't even have to be a big one. But everyone does because they're beginners and, you know. But yeah, man, if you do a good Fumikomi at the right, you know, and it's somewhat timed right, you'll generally pass, you know. My outlook on gradings, right, is that we've got a guideline given to us from the FIK, the International Federation, and by extension, that's from the All Japan Federation, right? And that's made up of criteria that have to be of things that have to be demonstrated in order to pass. There's nothing on that list or in those documents to say, don't do this, or if you do this, you fail, all right? So I don't like to have that mindset when I approach grading as a panelist, all right? I don't like to look at it from the point of view as, ooh, they did a hikiwaza. Everything else was fine, but they did a hikido, so bye-bye. That's not for me, all right? That's not my way of looking at gradings, all right? Are you demonstrating what the guidelines recommend for Kendo at that level, all right? And there's no list of waza. Doesn't say you should do this waza or that waza, all right? So for me, if you can do different waza, then I'm happy to see it in your grading, all right? If you're doing Ikkyu Shodan, I'm looking for you to demonstrate that you have a grasp of Kentai no Ichi and some attempt at doing Fumikomi. And I've got some basic, and it can be very, very basic understanding of the criteria of a valid strike, all right? Which is a strike with Kentai no Ichi, all right? When you get to second dan, then I definitely want to see that you're capable of doing different waza, and that you're understanding of those criteria has become more refined. All right, so now we're getting closer to an understanding of what really does make a valid strike. Okay, and that kikentai no ichi plus zanshin is there. Okay, and then for sandan, I'm looking to make sure that everything is there. All right, okay, yep, this person totally understands the idea behind what is a valid strike, and they're able to execute strikes that would meet that criteria should they reach the target. That's 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 my basic outlook when I'm sat on a grading panel. So if someone's doing shodan and they do a brilliant debana kote or a men kaishido, or if they do a men kaishido and it's not brilliant, I'm not going to fail them. I'm not going to fail them, all right? Unless they just do that. Like just do stuff that's like not there, right? So, and by that I mean like no kikentai no ichi, no understanding of the technique that they're trying to do whatsoever, all right? So I personally think, and especially from shodan up, I want to see, I'm not saying I want to see, but I'm happy to see a variety of techniques. And I particularly, personally, just as an individual, I take a bit of issue with any statement that says, do not do X waza in a grading, all right? I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's accurate. So I've heard it all. I've heard it. Don't do door strikes in a grading. Don't do this in a grading. Don't do that in a grading. Don't do hikiwaza in a grading. People tend not to execute hikiwaza in gradings because the opportunity for them doesn't arise that much, because you don't end up finding yourself in subazeriai all that often. Okay? And tai atari doesn't happen that much either. All right? But like, opponent comes at you, you block, bam, you do a brilliant hikido. Like, you're not going to fail someone for that. That'd be crazy, So yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts on that, okay? I think it's fine to use a variety of waza, and I think you just have to make sure you demonstrate what has to be demonstrated, all right? So it's all right pulling out all the different tricks that you think you might know. If you do them all rubbish, then it's not going to make you look great either. So just bear that in mind too. Okay, next one. I have a question about something I've ignored in the past. What do you think is the lesson to be learned from jumping kirikaeshi? And even with that, there's strike on the jump versus striking when you land. Are these motions what you would actually use in keiko or shiai? Thanks. Okay, so I know exactly what you mean. Jumping kirikaeshi is what you jump on the spot as you're doing the kirikaeshi. I've never seen it done where you strike as you land. I'm not sure about that. I've only really seen it done where the correct version is to hit as you jump this way. And it's usually done where you do it a lot of times. Like 120 or something, whatever. Super tough practice. And yeah, is it something that what's the lesson to be learned about it? There's a lot to be learned from it. But it's a really interesting thing because this came up recently whilst I was in Japan here, whilst we were doing keiko here at the school. Teacher there, she said something that really stuck with me and my wife Miyuki. We were talking a lot about it, where she said that there's lots of exercises in Kendo that they do on a daily basis. And she said that it's not Kendo, it's undo, it's exercise. Kendo is where you cross shinai, and there's semeai, and there's riai, and there's, that fight for you, kotatotsu. That's really Kendo. The other stuff is kind of exercise. But it's exercise in order to improve your ability to perform in the real Kendo, if that makes sense. I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it, and I really liked it. And I think jumping kirikaeshi is an excellent example. And to some extent, you could say the same about any type of kirikaeshi. It's like kata, uchikomi, karigeko, oikomi. They're not directly applicable to keiko or shiai or jitsuki, whatever. They're not directly applicable. You're not doing shiai. Yeah, man, right? Don't, if you are, stop. But it's a series or sequence of exercises that improve and increase your ability to perform in real Kendo. And in the case of jumping kirikaeshi, it has lots of benefits. It has a lot of benefits that normal kirikaeshi has. Breathing exercises. I think one of the biggest things that kirikaeshi, suburi, uchikomi, karieko, oikomi, these things all really benefit. Jumping kirikaeshi is a good one, actually, is a thing called shinai sosa. So the movement of the shinai. The ability to move the shinai nimbly. Is nimbly a word? Accurately, smoothly. Not like it's a heavy object that you're trying to wield, but rather it's an extension of your own body. And that can only be achieved by swinging it more. And jumping kirikaeshi is a good example of that. It definitely increases your ability to wield the shinai, both through the how can I say, like the muscle development, coordination, wrist flexibility, as well as your ability to jump, obviously, but your leg muscles, which are required for jumping forward to leap, fumikomi, these sort of things. There's a rhythm, there's breathing, there's all sorts that can be gained from it. It's not, you can't just pick it up and put it into shiai. No, but there's the stuff that you gain from it. It's like any other sort of, not any other sort of, but it's like lots of other sorts of exercise, physical training exercise that will be a net benefit to your Kendo overall. So it's not necessarily, and there are motion. It's not, no, you wouldn't come at somebody like this, but there are times in Kendo where you might do kind of a nidan waza type thing, pam pam this way, pam pam, or pam pam onto the kote this way, or even kaishido pam pam this way. These all come from, this movement of the wrists, which you develop from kirikaeshi, right? And I definitely think jumping kirikaeshi can be really good for that. Can be really good. It's one method. There's loads of them, but that's one. Super tough. Nobody likes it. Next one. Hello, not so much a question, but a notice for people looking to travel to Japan and do Kendo this summer or early autumn even. That's me. That's where I am right now. In many places, they've started to cancel practices because it's unsafe. I personally had a practice cancelled today because the interior temperature of the gym was 34 degrees Celsius. Open public practices or local ones may also be cancelled. Heat stroke is a big concern right now. Do other places outside of Japan practice with the face shield inside the men? Okay, so this is true. It's hot. It's hot here, all right? I think we've had 38 degrees, stuff like that. In the dojo, it's been pretty hot. In fairness, there's a big push in Japan right now to prevent heat stroke, which is great. It's been a long time coming. It's kind of a double-edged sword, I'm not going to lie, which I'll get to in a minute. I came here last year. I've been here a few times since, but a year ago at the same time I was here, it was super hot then as well. And the difference is now lots of places are really trying to prevent heat stroke. So lots of schools, especially, and lots of kids dojos or school dojos, of course, happen at the school. They're now like fixing air conditioning into the dojos, finally. And it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. But there's without a doubt, there's loads of places I'm sure that still haven't sort of got that. Maybe a local smaller dojos that are like just dojos, they're not part of a school or an institution. I'm sure they are in that situation. But here, the school my daughter's at, for example, they just put aircon this year. Last year we didn't have it when we was here last year. So I think they only put it in like a month ago, actually. So before that, they didn't have it. So the difference is last year when we were here, they'd only practice 20 minutes, half an hour at a time before taking a break for water. So that's where it becomes a double-edged sword, because first time I spoke to my daughter after they installed it. So it must be better now they've got the aircon. She said, no, now we have to practice an hour at a time. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword now, you know. But because, you know, it's good that they moved in that direction and they're trying to tackle that, because it's been a big problem in Japan for a long time. As heat stroke, it's a big problem. So I'm glad they're doing something about that. I don't know if there are places outside Japan that require the face shield inside the mask, inside the men, sorry. And here in Japan, you need to have the half face shield inside your men, which I to be honest, I use all the time now. I have done for a couple of years now, few years now. I don't mind the half mask, the shield. I don't mind that at all. I don't find it disturbing in any way whatsoever. The only time it's really bothered me was the other day when they gave me a drink in a cup and it had a straw in it. Forgot I was wearing the shield. So I tried to put the straw through and it hit the shield. But, you know, you can still fit it underneath. Otherwise, I don't even notice I'm wearing it, to be honest. So yeah, I think they're pretty good, actually, the shields. It's my own opinion again, but I have noticed. I've noticed a few things about it. Like I don't find it disturbing in any way, but I definitely started to feel like it's more hygienic to wear it. Because one, I've seen what the inside of mine looks like after keiko, and two, like I've seen in when I've done keiko with somebody that didn't have it in, and like the light was coming in through the window from the sun just the right way, right way to backlight them. And when they sort of went, yeah, to shout, I saw all the spit droplets come out. It made me think, yeah, I think the shields are a pretty good idea, actually. It's kind of gross if you think about it. But I know it was like 20 years that I did without it, but I'm glad. I think it's a pretty good idea. As I say, it's not really disturbing. Okay, last one. How do you get through the dichotomy, big word, of doing your kendo and whilst being adaptable to your opponent? Any of the insights or thoughts around this would be greatly appreciated. I think this is a fantastic question. All right, so talk a lot about this sort of thing on the channel. And here's the key, right? It can be summed up in a single sentence, all right? Doing your kendo is not the same as doing kendo by yourself, all right? Doing your kendo or your own kendo is not the same as doing kendo by yourself, all right? And when I say doing kendo by yourself, I don't mean literally by yourself as in like on your own, like suburi, right? Or image training, something like that. I don't mean that. I mean standing in front of someone and just doing whatever you feel like, yeah? Which is what lots of people do, most people do, all right? I still do my own kendo whilst basing the decisions I make on the interaction I'm having with the person on the other side of my shinai, all right? So what I'm not doing is slipping into doing, what I'm trying not to do, I should say, is slipping into their rhythm or their kendo, but I'm trying to do my kendo. I'm trying to control the situation, but at the same time, base my interaction, my decisions, my movements, my Waza selection on the situation that's unfolding in front of me. All right? So I'm not just stood there going, right, yeah, I want to do men now. Men, oh, no, I got a kaishido. Yeah, okay, now I'll do kote. Yeah, kote. Oh, I got a kote kaishi men. Yeah, okay, next I'll do gakudo. Yeah, oh, yeah, got one. That's not doing my Kendo. That's doing Kendo by myself. All right? That's a bit different. It's very different. It's very different. And I'm not sure how I can explain it in other terms. Yeah? But I'm still doing my Kendo and I sit there, okay, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen here? What if I, okay, all right, they're doing this, right. Okay, I think they want to hit my men. Okay, well, maybe I'll let them. All right, come for that men then, come for them. And there is pang, kote. Oh, actually, they were trying to do kote kaishi men. Or something like that, you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean it's successful all the time, but I'm still in control of what I'm doing. I still make my own decisions about what techniques I want to potentially try to do. But I base it on the information that I'm presented with rather than just my own ideas that come into my head. Hope that makes sense. And with that, we're at the end of the show. Thank you very much for joining me today. Again, apologies for the setup. I'm in an Airbnb, random background, not brilliant lighting. I've been at Kendo today as well, so I'm all over the place. But thank you for joining me. I'm not sure if I'll have a show next week because I'm still traveling around, but I'll be back as soon as I can be. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to shop at KendoStar. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.